dancing right beside you. Last night I had a dream about you. In this dream I'm dancing right beside you, and it looked like everyone was having fun. The kind of feeling I've waited so long. Don't stop, come a little closer as we jam. The rhythm gets stronger. Nothing wrong with just a little fun. We were dancing all night long. Oh, I don't know what to do about this dream, and oh, I don't know what to do. I wish this dream comes true. 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 The time is right to put my arms around you. You're feeling right, you wrap your arms around too. But suddenly I feel the shining sun. Before I knew it, this dream was all gone. Why don't you play the game? 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 Oh, I don't know what to do about this dream, and oh, I don't know what to do. I wish this dream comes true. 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 I wish this dream comes true.
Hello, 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 hello. How are we? How are we? How are we? What's going on? Don't you start. I just started streaming. Oh my goodness. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? I can't even. That, I'll be back. Hello. Oh, I quit. Both of you, stop. The perils of owning not one, but two huskies. Two huskies. Get a husky, they said. They got lots of personality, they said. Really friendly, they said. All that's been true, but my goodness, we have to emphasize the personality at times. My older boy, Bandit, as you just heard, we're getting the bathroom painted, and I keep a water bowl in there for him. And the water bowl's been pulled out. He knows it's pulled out. He's howling because we have the bathroom door closed, and he can't get in there. Because if you're a long-time viewer, yeah, as our long-time viewers know, he has this thing about having doors closed. I'm also out of breath right now because I took him for a WALK before stream, and I was like, we got back just in time to start stream. Alright. And I was like, oh, yay! Alright, he'll be calm, he'll be chill, and then wow, 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 right when I turn the ASMR mic on. But anyways, introductions first. My name is Ruin, and I am the Archsage of Arcanum Exodius, our humble little library on this corner of the internet. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And what are we doing today? Well, that's an easy one. Let me just hop right over here. Now, why is my music not playing? There we go. Get the music playing. Get the robes on. Pull the book out. Ha ha ha. There we go. And let's see, before we get started here, let's Burger, the man with the golden touch. Hi, Midas. Hello? Hello? Hello, hello, hello? Cha. Okay. So, give me a hot second here. Alright, alright, alright. Celesteria. Is that how you say it, Celesteria? Oh, Celesteria, thank you, thank you. Welcome to the library. Grab a book, grab a blanket, make yourself comfortable. Celeste, may I call you Celeste? Celesteria, okay, that's awesome. Welcome in, welcome in. Alright, Celeste is perfectly fine. I have some funny stories, not appropriate for ASMR, but I do have some funny stories about someone I knew named Celeste. Okay. The TLDR is that they were furry. Not that there's anything wrong with that by any means. Yeah, during the gaming, I tend to tell a lot more stories. when I'm doing reading ASMR, I tend to, like, I might occasionally do an editorial comment, but I tend to focus on the reading. I don't do a straight reading. I actually, if you pay attention and if you know the source material, I do change it because I do more of a performance. So, but right now I am stalling for time. But how has your day been? What's been going on? I'm trying to remember how to do something, but if I can't figure it out in the next 2 minutes, my mic was blocking. If I can't figure it out in the next 2 minutes, we're gonna move on. Okay. So. Okay. Gotcha. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you. Thank you. The water ASMR that you hear in the background is provided courtesy of my husky, Bandit. I hope you enjoy it. I couldn't stop him if I tried. It's, yeah. Our bathroom that we normally keep their drinks in, because I'm right next to the bathroom, we're getting it renovated, and yeah, and so oh, and she's so cute, Gemma. Oh my goodness. So right now I've had to move his drinking bowl from the bathroom where we normally keep it. I actually have our shower curtain down, spread across my carpet. Gemma, with his water ball. That's pretty cool. Gem as in gemstone. That's a good name. That's a good name. Alright. Well, we shall. Bandit, I cannot. This is the one day I've been letting you have that door open because they haven't been painting, but they're almost. microphone back on. And I can turn these off. Oh my goodness. You are... Nope, I'm not going to provoke him. I am not going to provoke him. I've decided, I found this on the internet like a couple of years ago. Until I get my own, I'm just going to use this whenever they interrupt stream for an extended period of time. This will be how you guys know you'll see this. Okay. Because, yeah, there's been a 15-minute delay in stream because, yeah. Oh my goodness. So when we last left off, my ASMR mic was acting up. That's been fixed. Okay. Now we're going to pick up. We're going to be rereading a couple of pages, but we last left off with the encounter with Gollum and Bilbo surviving through that and making it to the other side of the Misty Mountains. And now we're going to pick up on chapter 6. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Bilbo had escaped the goblins, but he did not know where he was. He had lost a hood, cloak, food, pony, his buttons, and his friends. He wandered on and on till the sun began to sink westwards behind the mountains. Behind the mountains. Their shadows fell across Bilbo's path, and he looked back, and then he looked forward, and he could see before him only ridges and slopes falling towards the lowlands, and plains glimpsed occasionally between the trees. Good heavens! He exclaimed. I seem to have got right to the other side of the Misty Mountains, right to the edge of the land behind. Where, and oh where, can Gandalf and the dwarves have gotten to? I only hope to goodness they are not still back there in the power of the goblins. He still wandered on, out of the little high valley, over its edge, and down the slopes beyond. But all the while a very uncomfortable thought was gnawing inside of him. He wondered whether he ought not, now that he had that magic ring. Whether he ought not go back into the horrible tunnels and look for his friends. He had just made up his mind that it was his duty, that he must turn back, and very miserable he felt about it when he heard voices. He stopped and listened. It did not sound like goblins, so he crept forward carefully. He was on a stony path winding downwards, with a rocky wall on the left hand, and on the other side the ground sloped away, and there were dells below. The level of the path overhung with bushes and low trees. In one of these dells under the bushes, people were talking. He crept still nearer, and suddenly he saw peering between two big boulders a head with a red hood on. It was Balin. Balin! Doing a lookout. He could have clapped and shouted for joy, but he did not. He had still got the ring on, for fear of meeting someone or someone unexpected and unpleasant, and he saw that Balin was looking straight at him without noticing. I will give them all a surprise, he thought, as he crawled into the bushes at the edge of the dell. Gandalf was arguing with the dwarves. They were discussing all that happened to them in the tunnels, wondering and debating what they were to do now. The dwarves were grumbling, and Gandalf was saying that they could not possibly go on with their journey, leaving Mr. Baggins in the hands of the goblins without trying to figure out if he was alive or dead, and without trying to rescue him. After all, he is my friend, puffed the wizard, and now not a bad little chap. I feel responsible for him. I wish to goodness you had not lost him. Oh, my neck. The dwarves wanted to know why he had ever been brought at all, why he could not stick to his friends and come along with them, and why the wizard had not chosen someone with more sense. He's been more troubled than you so far, said one. If we have to go back now into those abominable tunnels to look for him, then drat him, I say, drat him. Gandalf glowered angrily. I brought him, and I don't bring things that are of no use. Either you help me look for him, or I go and leave you here to get out of this mess as best as you can yourselves. If only we could find him again. You'll thank me before all is over. Whatever did you want to go and drop him for, Dory? You would have dropped him, said Dory. If a goblin had suddenly grabbed your legs from behind in the dark, tripped up your feet, and kicked you in the back, then why didn't you pick him up again? Good heavens! Can you ask? Goblins fighting and biting in the dark, everybody falling over bodies and hitting one another. You nearly chopped off my head with glantering, and Lauren was stabbing here and there and everywhere, August. All of a sudden, you gave one of your blinding flashes, and the goblins ran back helping. I'm losing the accent. Okay, I might have to drop it. You shouted, "Follow me, everybody." Everybody ought to have followed. We thought everybody had. There was no time to count, as you know quite well, till we had dashed through the gate cards out of the lower door and helter-skelter down here. And here we are, without the burglar. Confused him. And here's the burglar, said Bilbo, stepping down to the middle of them, slipping off the ring. Oh, bless me, how they jumped. Then they shouted with surprise and delight. Gandalf was astonished as any of them, but probably more pleased than the others. He called to Balin and told him what he thought of a lookout man who let people walk right into them like that without warning. It is a fact that Bilbo's reputation went up a very, very great deal with the dwarves after this. If they had still doubted that he was really a first-class burglar. In spite of Gandalf's words, they doubted it no longer. Balin was the most puzzled of all, but everyone said it was a very clever bit of work. Indeed, Bilbo was so pleased with their praise that he just chuckled inside and said nothing whatever about the ring. And when they asked him how he did it, he said, "Oh, just crept along, very, very carefully, very quietly." Indeed, Bilbo was so pleased with their praise that he just chuckled inside and said nothing. Well, it is the first time that even a mouse has crept along carefully and quietly under my nose and has not been spotted, said Balin, and I take my hood off to you. Which Balin did. Balin, at your service, said he. Ah, your servant, Mr. Baggins, said Bilbo. They wanted to know all about his adventures after they had lost him. He sat down and told them everything. Well, almost everything except about finding the ring. Wow, not just now, he thought. They were particularly interested in the riddle competition and showed most appreciatively at his description of Gollum. And I couldn't think of any other questions with him sitting beside me. Befuddled and toned to Bilbo. So I said, "What's in my pocket?" And he couldn't guess it in 3 goes. So I said, "Well, what about your promise? Show me the way out." But he came at me to kill me, and I ran and I fell over, and he missed me. He missed me in the dark. Then I followed him because I heard him talking to himself. He thought I really knew the way out. And so he was making for it, and he sat down in the entrance, and I could not get by. So I jumped over him and escaped and ran down to the gate. What about the guards? Weren't there any? Oh yes, lots of them. But I dodged them. I got stuck in the door, which was only open a crack, and I lost lots of buttons, he said sadly, looking at his torn clothes. But I squeezed through all right. And, well, here I am. The dwarves looked at him with quite a new respect when he talked about dodging guards, jumping over Gollum, and squeezing through, as if it was not very difficult or very alarming. What did I tell you? Gandalf laughed. Mr. Baggins has more about him than you could ever guess. He gave Bilbo a queer look from under his bushy eyebrows as he said this, and the Hobbit wondered if he guessed at the part of his tale that he had left out. Then he had questions of his own to ask, for if Gandalf had explained it all by now to the dwarves, Bilbo had not heard it. He wanted to know how the wizard had turned up again, and where they'd all got to now. The wizard, to tell the truth, never minded explaining his cleverness more than once. So now he told Bilbo that both he and Elrond had been well aware of the presence of evil goblins in that part of the mountains, but their main gate used to come out of different paths, one more easy to travel by, so they often caught people benighted near their gates. Eventually people had given up going that way. The goblins must have opened the new entrance atop the pass the dwarves had taken quite recently, because they've been found quite safe up till now. I must see if I can't find a more or less decent gate giant to block it up again. Soon there'll be no getting over the mountains at all. As soon as Gandalf had heard Bilbo's yell, he realized what had happened. In the flash which killed the goblins that were grabbing him, he had nipped inside the crack just as it snapped to. He followed after the drivers and prisoners right to the edge of the Great Hall. There he sat down and worked up the best magic he could in the shadows. Very ticklish business it was. Touch and go. He puffed, but of course, Gandalf had made a special study of bewitchments with fire and lights. Even the Hobbit had never forgotten the magic fireworks at Old Took's Midsummer's Eve parties, as you remember. The rest we all know, except that Gandalf knew all about the back door, as the goblins called the lower gate, where Bilbo lost his buttons. As a matter of fact, it was well known to anybody who was acquainted with this part of the mountains, but it took a wizard to keep his head in the tunnels and guide them in the right direction. They made that gate ages ago, Gandalf said, partly for a way of escape, if they needed one, partly as a way out into the lands beyond, where they still come in the dark and do great damage. They guard it always, and no one has ever managed to block it up. They'll guard it doubly after this. Gandalf laughed. All the others laughed too. After all, they had lost a good deal, but they had killed the great goblin and a great many others besides, and they had all escaped, so they might be sad to have the best of it so far. But the wizard called them to their senses. We must be getting on at once. Now we are a little rested. They'll be out after us in hundreds when night comes on, and already shadows are lengthening. They can smell our footsteps for hours and hours after we have passed. It must be miles on before dusk. There'll be a little bit of moon if it keeps fine, and that is lucky. Not that they mind the moon much, but it'll give us a little light to steer by. Oh, yes, he said, and answered more questions from the Hobbit. Did I? What? You lose track of time inside goblin tunnels. Today's Thursday, and it was Monday night or Tuesday morning that we were captured. We have gone miles and miles and come right down through the heart of the mountains. We're now on the other side. Quite a shortcut. But we are not at the point to which our pass would have brought us. We're too far to the north and have some awkward country ahead, and we are still pretty high up. Let's get on. I am dreadfully hungry, groaned Bilbo, who was suddenly aware they had not had a meal since the night before last. Just think of that for a hobbit. His stomach felt all empty and loose and his legs all wobbly now that the excitement was over. Can't help it, said Gandalf, unless you'd like to go back and ask the goblins nicely to let you have your pony back and your luggage. No, thank you, said Bilbo. Oh, very well then. We must just tighten our belts and trudge on, or we shall have made in a supper, and that will be much worse than having none ourselves. As they went on, Bilbo looked from side to side for something to eat, but the blackberries were still only in flower, and of course, there were no nuts, not even hawthorn berries. He nibbled on a bit of sorrel, and he drank from a small mountain stream that crossed the path, and he ate 3 wild strawberries that he found on its bank, but it was not much good. They still went on and on. The rough path disappeared. The bushes and the long grasses between the boulders and the patches of rabbit-cropped turf, the thyme and sage and the marjoram, and the yellow rock roses all vanished, and they found themselves at the top of a wide, steep slope of fallen stones, the remain of the landslide. One began to go down this rubbish, and small pebbles rolled away from their feet. Soon large bits of split stone started clattering down, and started other pieces below them slithering and rolling, and lumps of rock were disturbed and pounded off, crashing down with a dust and a noise. Before long, the whole slope above them and below them seemed on the move, and they were sliding away, huddled all together in a fearful confusion of slipping, rattling, crackling slabs and stones. One sec. Where were we? It was the trees at the bottom that saved them. They slid into the edge of a climbing wood of pines that here stood right up the mountain slope from the deeper, darker forest of the valleys below. Some caught hold of the trunks and swung themselves into lower branches. Some, like the little Hobbit, got behind a tree to shelter them from the onslaught of the rocks. Soon the danger was over, and the slide had stopped. The last faint crashes could be heard as the largest of the disturbed stones went bounding and spinning amongst the bracken and the pine roots far below. Well, that has got on us a bit, huffed Gandalf. And even goblins tracking us will have a job to come down here quietly. I dare say, grumbled Bomber, but they won't find it difficult to send stones bouncing down on our heads. The dwarves and Bilbo were feeling far from happy and were rubbing their bruised and damaged legs and feet. Nonsense! We're going to turn aside here out of our path of the slide. We must be quick. Oh, look at the light. Gandalf pointed to the sun. It had long gone behind the mountains. Already the shadows were deepening about them, though far away the trees and over the black tops of those growing lower down they could still see the evening lights on the plains beyond. They limped now as fast as they were able down the gentle slopes of a pine forest in a slanting path leading steadily to southwards. At times they were pushing through a city of bracken with tall fronds rising right above the Hobbit's head. At times they were marching along quiet as ever, over a floor of pine needles, and all the while the forest gloom got heavier and heavier, and the forest silence deeper. Oh, there was no wind that evening to bring even a sea sighing to the branches of the trees. I've been there. Oh my goodness. Okay, so a little bit of a tangent here. Alright, but I know what he's talking. I think it's called the Oz effect. I do hiking, and a couple of years back when I went hiking with Bandit, we experienced it for 20 minutes. So it's so terrifying because the entire forest just goes quiet, and everything that's in your head is just telling you that there's something wrong going on, and you need to be careful. It's like I'm getting shivers thinking about that right now. It's one of the scariest times I've ever been hiking. I have bear spray that I carry with me when I go hiking, and it is the only time that I ever had the bear spray, like, death knuckle grip out. And I'm watching Bandit, because Bandit's going to be picking up on any problems well before I will. That's the advantage to hiking with a dog. They have better senses than you. So you pay attention to the dog. Because if they start growling at a bush, if they lay down and stay still and refuse to go, which he did, by the way, then as scary as that is, you stay with them. You don't force them to go. There was a solid 10 minutes of that 20 minutes where Bandit would not move. He had laid down and just absolutely would not move at all. And so I just sat down next to him in this quiet forest, petting him, going, because it's beyond terrifying. And I hope no one experiences it and ends up on the bad side of it. Must we go any further? Asked Bilbo. It was so dark they could only see Thorin's beard wagging beside him, and so quiet they could only hear the dwarves breathing like a loud noise. My toes are all bruised and bent, and my legs ache, and my stomach is wagging like an empty sack. A bit further, chided Gandalf. After what seemed ages further, they came suddenly to an opening where no trees grew. The moon was up and was shining into the clearing. Somehow it struck all of them as not at all a nice place, although there was nothing wrong to see. All of a sudden they heard a howl down the hill, a long, shuddering howl. It was answered by another away to the right and a good deal nearer to them, then by another not far away to the left. It was wolves howling at the moon, wolves gathering together. But there were no wolves living near Mr. Baggins' hole at home, but he knew that noise. He had had it described to him often in tales. One of his elder cousins, on the Took side, who had been a great traveler, used to imitate it to frighten him. To hear it out in the forest under the moon was too much for Bilbo. Even magic rings are not much use against wolves, especially against the evil packs that lived under the shadow of a goblin-infested mountain. Over the edge of the wild on the borders of the unknown. Wolves of that sort smell keener than goblins, and do not need to see you to catch you. Okay. I need a sippy. We're going to start our commercial break a little sooner, just because I do need a sippy. Alright, we'll be right back. Sorry about that. I had to go ask my nephew if he could just turn it down a little bit. Because with my headphones on, my noise canceling headphones, I could hear him through the headphones, not through the mic, not through this. But he was being loud enough that he got through my noise cancellation. Good thing I turned my mic off during breaks, just in case. So, anyways, let us continue. Must we go any further? Asked Bilbo, when it was so dark that he could only see Thorin's beard wagging beside him, and so quiet that he could hear the dwarves breathing like a loud noise. My toes are all bruised and bent, and my legs ache, and my stomach is wagging like an empty sack. A bit further, said Gandalf. At what seemed ages further, they came suddenly to an empty opening where no trees grew. The moon was up and was shining into the clearing. Somehow it struck all of them as not at all a nice place. Although there was nothing wrong to see, all of a sudden they heard a howl away down the hill, a long, shuddering howl. It was answered by another away to the right and a good deal nearer to them, then by another not so far away to the left. It was wolves howling at the moon, wolves gathering together. There were no wolves living near Mr. Baggins' hole at home, but he knew that noise. He had it described to him often enough in tales. One of his older cousins, on the Took side, naturally, who had been a great traveler, used to imitate it to frighten him. To hear it out in the forest under the moon was too much for Bilbo. Even magic rings are not much use against wolves, especially against the evil packs that lived under the shadow of the goblin-infested mountains, or over the edge of the wild on borders of the unknown. Wolves of that sort smell keener than goblins, and do not need to see you to catch you. What shall we do? What shall we do? Bilbo cried. Escaping goblins to be caught by wolves, he said. That became a proverb, though we now say out of the frying pan into the fire, in the same uncomfortable situations. I kind of like escaping goblins to be eaten by wolves. I wish that was a proverb. I don't know if people would understand you if you said that, but I do wish it was a proverb. Up the trees, quick! Cried Gandalf, and they ran to the trees at the edge of the glade, hunting for those that had branches fairly low or were slender enough to swarm up. They found them as quick as they ever could, you can guess, and up they went as high as they could trust the branches. You would have left from a safe distance if you'd seen the dwarves sitting up in the trees with their beards dangling down, like old gentlemen gone cracked and playing at being boys. Fili and Kili were at the top of a tall lark, like an enormous Christmas tree. Dory, Nori, Orin, and Oin and Gloin were more comfortable in a huge pine with regular branches sticking out at intervals like the spokes of a wheel. Bilford, Boffer, Bomber, and Thorin were in another. Dwalin and Balin had swarmed up a tall, slender fir with few branches and were trying to find a place to sit in the greenery of the topmost boughs. Gandalf, who was a good deal taller than the others, had found a tree into which they could not climb, a large pine standing at the very edge of the glade. He was quite hidden in its boughs, but you could see his eyes gleaming in the moon as he peeped out. And Bilbo. He could not get into any tree, and was scuttling about from trunk to trunk, like a rabbit that has lost its hole and has a dog after it. "You've left the burglar behind again," shouted Nori to Dory, looking down. "I can't always be carrying burglars on my back," retorted Doris. "Down tunnels and up trees. What do you think I am? A porter? He'll be eaten if we don't do something," shouted Thorin, for there were howls all around them now, getting nearer and nearer. "Dory!" he called, for Dory was lowest down the easiest tree. "Be quick and give Mr. Baggins a hand up." Dory was really a decent fellow. Well, in spite of his grumbling. Poor Bilbo could not reach his hand even when he climbed down to the bottom branch and hung his arm down as far as he ever could. So Dory actually climbed out of the tree and let Bilbo scramble up and stand on his back. Just at that moment, the wolves trotted howling into the clearing. All of a sudden, there were hundreds of eyes looking at them. Still, Dory did not let Bilbo down. He waited till he clambered off his shoulders onto the branches, and then he jumped for the branches himself. Only just in time. A wolf snapped at his cloak as he swung up and nearly got him. In a minute, there was a whole pack of them yelping all around the tree and leaping up at the trunk, with eyes blazing and tongues hanging out. But even the wild wargs, for so the evil wolves over the edge of the wild were named, cannot climb trees. For a time they were safe. Luckily, it was warm and, well, not windy. Trees are not very comfortable to sit in for very long any time, but in the cold and the wind, with wolves all around below waiting for you, they can be perfectly miserable places. This glade in the ring of trees was evidently a meeting place of the wolves. More and more kept coming in. They left guards at the foot of the tree in which Dory and Bilbo were, and then went snuffling about till they had smelted out every tree that had anyone in it. These they guarded too, while the rest, hundreds and hundreds, it seemed, went and sat in a great circle in the glade, and in the middle of that circle was a great grey wolf. He spoke to them in the dreadful language of the wargs. Gandalf understood it. Bilbo did not, but it sounded terrible to him, as if all their talk was about cruel and wicked things. As, well, it was. Every now and then all the wargs in the circle would answer their great chief all together, and their dreadful clamor almost made the Hobbit fall out of his pine tree. I will tell you what Gandalf heard, though Bilbo did not understand it. The wargs and the goblins often helped one another in wicked deeds. Goblins do not venture very far from the mountains unless they're driven out and looking for new homes, or marching to war, which, I am glad to say has not happened for a long while. But in those days, they sometimes used to go on raids, especially to get food or slaves to work for them. Then they often got the wargs to help and share the plunder with them. Sometimes they rode on wolves like men do on horses. Now it seemed that a great goblin raid had been planned for that very night. The wargs had come to meet the goblins, and the goblins were late. The reason, no doubt, was the death of the great goblin, and all the excitement caused by the dwarves and Bilbo and the wizard, for whom they were probably still hunting. In spite of the dangers of this far land, bold men had of late been making their way back into it from the south, cutting down trees and building themselves places to live in among the more pleasant woods in the valley and along the river shores. There were many of them, and they were brave and well armed, and even the wargs dared not attack them if there were many together or on the bright day. But now they had planned with the goblins' help to come by night upon some of the villages nearest the mountains. If their plan had been carried out, then there would have been none left there the next day. All would have been killed except the few goblins that kept them from the wolves and carried them back as prisoners to their caves. This was dreadful talk to listen to, not only because of the brave woodmen and their wives and children, but also because of the danger which now threatened Gandalf and his friends. The wargs were angry and puzzled at finding them here in their very meeting place. They thought they were friends of the woodmen and were come on to spy on them. I'm gonna take a sippy. Everyone take a sippy. Sippy time. There we go. Nice. Apologies. This was dreadful talk. I'm okay. This was dreadful talk to listen to, not only because of the brave woodmen and their wives and children, but also because of the danger which now threatened Gandalf and his friends. The wargs were angry and puzzled at finding them here in their very meeting place. They thought they were friends of the woodsmen and were come to spy on them, and they were taking news of their plans down to the valleys, so then the goblins and the wolves would have to fight a terrible battle instead of capturing prisoners and drawing people awake suddenly from their sleep. So the wargs had no intention of getting away and letting the people of the trees escape. At any rate, not until morning. Long before that, they said, goblin soldiers would be coming down from the mountains, and goblins can climb trees or cut them down. Now you can understand why Gandalf, listening to their growling and yelping, began to be dreadfully afraid. Wizard though he was, and to feel all that they were in a very bad place and not escaped at all. All the same, he was not going to let them have it all their own way. Though he could not do very much, stuck up a tall tree with wolves all around the ground below. He gathered the huge pine cones and the branches of the tree. Then he set one alight with bright blue fire and threw it whizzing down among the circle of wolves. It struck one on the back, and immediately his shaggy coat caught fire. And he was leaping to and fro, yelping horribly. Well, hello, bandit. Then another came. You're not going to start yelping yourself, are you? You're just going to lay down, right? Right, Mouse? Go. We don't need the yelping sound effects. It's okay. We don't need them. You can just lay down. It'll be okay. Thank you. He listened. it was a short temper tantrum this time. I don't think it was a longer one. Alright. Oh, I'm getting eepy. But I want to get to the end of this chapter. So let me take a look at it and see. Let's look ahead a little bit. Because what we might do is read out till the end of this chapter, and then that'll be straight. Oh yeah, that's not that far. Oh yeah, that's 10 pages, that's all. That'll actually probably cover our normal streaming time. Then another wolf came, and another, one in blue flames, one in red, another in green. They burst on the ground in the middle of the circle and went off in colored sparks and smoke. Especially large one hit the chief wolf on the nose, and he leapt in the air 10 feet, and then rushed around and round the circle, biting and snapping at other wolves in his anger and fright. The dwarves and bilbos shouted and cheered. The rage of the wolves was terrible to see, and the commotion they made filled all the forest. Wolves are afraid of fire at all times, but this was the most terrible and uncanny fire. If a spark got in their coats, it stuck and burned into them. Unless they rolled over quick, they were soon all in flames. Very soon, all about the glade, wolves were rolling over and over to put out the sparks on their backs, while those that were burning were running down, about howling and setting others alight, till their own friends chased them down away, and they fled off the slopes, crying and yammering and looking for water. What is all this uproar in the forest tonight? Said the Lord of the Eagles. He was sitting black in the moonlight, on top of a lonely pinnacle of rock at the eastern edge of the mountains. I hear wolves' voices. Are the goblins at mischief in the woods? He swept up in the air, and immediately 2 of his guards from the rocks at either end leapt up to follow him. They circled up in the sky and looked down upon the ring of the wargs, a tiny spot far, far below. But eagles have keen eyes and smell things at a great distance. The Lord of the Eagles of the Misty Mountains had eyes that could look at the sun unblinking and see a rabbit moving on the ground a mile below, even in the moonlight. So though he could not see the people in the trees, he could make out the commotion among the wolves and see the tiny flashes of fire, and hear the howling and yelping come up faint from far beneath him. Also, he could see the glint of the moon on goblin spears and helmets as the long lines of the wicked folk crept down the hillside from the gate and round into the wood. We'll be right back. Hubie, welcome in. Welcome, welcome. Hello, hello, hello. So, Hubie, I don't do kissies. Okay. I will do good boy. Normally, I don't do redeems when I do my stories, but you caught me at a good time. Okay. Onyx, welcome in. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Hubie, you have stopped in a knot in a library where knowledge and learning is above all, where always being curious is what we seek to do. And for that, Hubie, that makes you a good boy. A good, good, good boy. Good boy. Good boy, Hubie. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Keep on learning throughout your journey. Keep on learning. Anyways, I had to deal with my huskies. They're taken care of right now. Okay, so now let's go back to the Lord of the Eagles. The Lord of the Eagles of the Misty Mountains had eyes that could look at the sun unblinking, and could see a rabbit moving on the ground a mile below, even in the moonlight. So although he could not see people in the trees, he could make out the commotion among wolves and see the tiny flashes of fire, and hear the howling and yelping come up faint from far beneath him. Also he could see the glint of the moon on goblin spears and helmets, as long lines of the wicked folk crept down the hillside from their gate and wound into the wood. Eagles, well, they aren't kindly birds. Some are cowardly and cruel, but the ancient race of the northern mountains were the greatest of all birds. They were proud and strong and noble-hearted. They did not love goblins or fear them, and they took any notice of them at all, which was seldom. They did not eat such creatures. They swooped on them and drove them shrieking back to their caves, and stopped whatever wickedness the goblins were doing. The goblins hated the eagles and feared them, but could not reach their lofty seats or drive them from the mountains. Tonight the Lord of the Eagles was filled with curiosity to know what was afoot. So he summoned many other eagles to him, and they flew away from the mountains, and slowly circling ever round, they came down towards the ring of wolves, and the meeting sorry. They flew away from the... I lost my place, I'm sorry. Slowly circling around and around, they came down towards the ring of wolves and the meeting place of the goblins. Very good thing, too. Dreadful things were going on down there. The wolves that caught fire and fled to the forest had set alight in several places. It was high summer, and on this eastern side of the mountains there had been little rain some time. Yellow bracken fallen branches, deep piled pine needles, and here and there dead trees were Sioux in flames. All around the clearing of the warg's fire was leaping, but the wolf guards did not leave the trees. Maddened and angry, they were leaping and howling round the trunks, cursing the dwarves in their horrible language, with their tongues hanging out and their eyes shining as red and as fierce as the flames. And suddenly goblins came running up yelling. They thought a battle with the woodsmen were going on, but they soon learned what had really happened. Some actually sat down and laughed. Others waved their spear and clashed the shafts against their shields. Goblins are not afraid of fire, and they soon had a plan which seemed to them most amusing. Some got all the wolves together in a pack. Some attacked fern and brushwood round the tree trunks. Others rushed round and stamped and beat and stamped. Stamped and beat until nearly all of the flames were put out, but they did not put out the fire nearest the trees where the dwarfs were. That the fire they fed with leaves and dead branches and bracken. Soon they had a ring of smoke and flame all around the dwarves, a ring which they kept spreading out. They kept from spreading outwards, but it closed slowly in till the running fire was licking the fuel piled under the trees. Smoke was in Bilbo's eyes. He could feel the heat of the flames, and through the reek he could see the goblins dancing round and round in a circle like people round a midsummer bonfire. Outside the ring of dancing warriors with spears and axes stood the wolves at a respectful distance, watching and waiting. He could hear the goblins beginning a horrible song. 15 birds and 5 fire trees, their feathers were fanned in a fiery breeze. Oh, but funny little birds, they had no wings. Oh, what shall we do with funny little things? Roast them alive, or stew them in a pot. Fry them, boil them, or eat them hot. Then they stopped and shouted out, "Fly away, little birds, fly away if you can. Come down, little birds, or you'll get roasted in your nest. Sing, sing, little birds, why don't you sing?" Go away, little boys, shouted Gandalf in answer. It isn't bird nesting time. Also naughty little boys that play with fire get punished. He said it to make them angry and to show them he was not frightened of them, though of course he was, wizard though he was. But they took no notice, and they went on singing, "Oh, burn, burn, tree and fern, shrivel and scorch a fizzling torch, to light the might for our delight. Oh yeah, bake and roast 'em, fry and roast 'em, till beards blaze and eyes glaze, till hair smells and skins crack, fat melts and bones black, and cinders lie beneath the sky, so dwarves shall die. And light the night for our delight. Ho hey, ho harry hey, ho hey, ho harry hey, ho hey, ho harry hey." And with the ho hey, the flames were under Gandalf's tree. In a moment it spread to the others. The bark caught fire, and the lower branches cracked. Then Gandalf climbed to the top of his tree. A sudden splendor flashed from his wand like lightning, as he got ready to spring down from on high, right among the spears of the goblins. That would have been the end of them, though he probably killed many of them as he came hurtling down like a thunderbolt. But he never leapt. Just as the moment the Lord of the Eagles swept down from above, seized him in his talons, and he was gone. There was a howl of anger and surprise from the goblins. Loud cried the Lord of the Eagles, "England!" Yes, it's the King of England. I can English well, I swear. I have a degree in English. I go to law school. I know the language, I promise. There was a howl of anger and surprise from the goblins. Loud cried the Lord of the Eagles, to whom Gandalf had now spoken. Back swept the great birds that were with him, and down they came like huge black shadows. The wolves yammered and gnashed their teeth, the goblins yelled and stamped with rage, and flung their heavy spears in the air in vain. Over them swooped the eagles. The dark rush of their beating wings smote them to the floor, drove them far away. The talons tore at goblin faces. Other birds flew to the treetops and seized the dwarves, who were scrambling up now as far as they dared to go. Poor little Bilbo was very nearly left behind again. He just managed to catch hold of Dory's legs, as Dory was borne off last of all, and up they went together above the tumult and the burning. Bilbo was swinging there with his arms nearly breaking. Now, far below, the goblins and the wolves was gathering far and wide into the woods. A few eagles were still circling and sweeping above the battleground. The flames above the trees sprang suddenly up above the highest branches. They were crackling. They went crackling up into fire. There was a sudden flurry of sparks and smoke as Bilbo had escaped only just in time. Soon the light of the burning fire was faint below, and a red twinkle on the black floor. And they were high up in the sky, rising all the time in strong sweeping circles. Bilbo never forgot that fight, clinging onto Dory's ankles. He moaned, "My arms! My arms!" But Dory groaned in response. "Oh, me poor legs! Poor legs!" At the height of times, at the best of times, heights made Bilbo giddy. He used to turn strange if he looked over the edge of quite a little cliff, and he never liked ladders, let alone trees, never having had to escape from wolves before. So you can imagine how his head swam now when he looked down between his dangling toes and saw the dark lands opening wide underneath them, touched here and there with the light of the moon on a hillside rock or a stream in the plains. The pale peaks of the mountains were coming nearer, moonlight spikes of rock sticking out of black shadows. Summer not, it seemed very cold. He shut his eyes and wondered if he could hold on any longer. Then imagined what would happen if he did not. He felt sick. The flight ended only just in time for him, just before his arms gave way. He loosed Dory's ankles with a grasp and fell onto the rough platform of the eagle's eyrie. There he lay without speaking, and his thoughts were a mixture of surprise at being saved from the fire, and fear lest he fall off that narrow place into the deep shadows on either side. He was feeling very strange indeed in his head by the time, this time after the dreadful adventures of the last 3 days, with next to nothing to eat, and he found himself saying out loud, "Now I know what a piece of bacon feels like when it's suddenly picked out of the pan on a fork and put back on the shelf." "No, you don't," he heard Dory answering, "because the bacon knows it'll get back in the pan sooner or later. That is to be hoped we shan't. Also, eagles aren't forks." "Oh, no, not a little bit like storks." "Forks, I mean," said Bill, sitting up and looking anxiously at the eagle who was perched close by. He wondered what other nonsense he had been saying, and if the eagle would think it rude. You ought not to be rude to an eagle when you are only the size of a hobbit and up in his eyrie at night. The eagle only sharpened his beak on a stone and trimmed his feathers and took no notice. Soon another eagle flew up. "The Lord of the Eagles bids you to bring your prisoners to the great shelf," he cried, and was off again. other sea story in his claws and flew away with him into the night, leaving Bilbo all alone. He had just strength to wonder what the messenger had meant by prisoners and began to think of being torn up for supper like a rabbit when his own turn came. The eagle came back, seized him in his talons by the back of his coat, and swooped off. This time he flew only a short way. Very soon Bilbo was laid down, trembling with fear, on a wide shelf of rock on the mountainside. There was no path down on it to save by flying, and no path down on it except by jumping over a precipice. There he found all the others sitting with their backs to the mountain wall. The Lord of the Eagles was also there, and was speaking to Gandalf. It seemed that Bilbo was not going to be eaten after all. The wizard and the Eagle Lord appeared to know one another slightly, and had been friendly terms. As a matter of fact, Gandalf, who had often been in the mountains, had once rendered a service to the Eagles and healed their lord from an arrow wound. So you see, prisoners had meant prisoners rescued from the goblins only, not captive of the Eagles. As Bilbo listened to the talk of Gandalf, he realized that at last they were going to escape really and truly from the dreadful mountains. He was discussing plans with the great eagle for carrying the dwarves and himself and Bilbo's far away and sending down well on their journey across the plains below. The Lord of the Eagles would not take them anywhere near where men lived. They would shoot at us with their great bows of yew, the Lord said, for they would think that we were after their sheep, and other times they would be right. No, we are glad to cheat the goblins of their sport, and glad to repay our thanks to you, but we will not risk ourselves for dwarves in the southward plains. Very well, said Gandalf. Take us where and as far as you will. We are already deeply obliged to you, but in the meantime we are famished with hunger. I am nearly dead of it, said Bilbo in a weak little voice that nobody heard. Then can perhaps be mended, remarked the Lord of the Eagles. Later on, you might have seen a bright fire on the shelf of rock and the figures of the dwarves around it cooking and making a fine roasting smell. The Eagles had brought up dry boughs for fuel, and they brought rabbits' hairs and a small sheep. That's so funny. That's funny because, alright, sorry. The Lord of the Eagles, 2 paragraphs before, was like, we're not going to go and drop you guys off near any human settlements. And they're all like, why? Why? Because the humans might think we're after their sheep, and other days they'd be right. And then you go down 2 paragraphs, and when they're bringing in food for the dwarves, the Lord of the Eagles and the other eagles bring in a small sheep. That is hilarious. Why, yes, we do in fact do thievery around here. Would you like some? Later on, you might have seen a bright fire on the shelf of rock and figures of the dwarves round it cooking and making a fine roasting smell. The eagles had brought up dry boughs for fuel, and they had brought rabbits' hairs and a small sheep. The dwarves managed all the preparations. Bilbo was too weak to help. Anyway, he was not much good at skinning rabbits or cutting up meat, being used to having it delivered by the butcher all ready to cook. Gandalf, too, was lying down after doing his part in setting the fire going, since Oin and Gloin had lost their tinder boxes. Dwarves had never taken to matches even yet. So ended the adventures of the Misty Mountains. Soon Bilbo's stomach was feeling full and comfortable again. He felt he could sleep contentedly, though really he would have liked a loaf and butter better than bits of meat toasted on sticks. He slept curled up on hard rock more soundly than ever he had done on his feather bed in his own little hole at home. But all night he dreamed of his own house and wandered in his sleep into all different rooms looking for something that he could not find nor remembered what it looked like. Conveniently enough, that is the next chapter, and it is the end of stream. So we're gonna find someone to raid, and I'm gonna find my bookmark. Well, I'll have to find it after stream. I have seemingly misplaced it. That's okay. Alright. Cracky crack. We are done reading. Let's go find someone to say hi to. It's probably, yep. Alright. First, foremost, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for showing up. It really does mean the world to me. I know I say this almost every single time, but I really and truly do mean it. Stream would not exist without you, and you are here because you find something valuable in it, because you think this is worth your time. Because time, unlike money, unlike things, time once spent is gone for good. And it is not lost on me that time spent here, spent your very valuable time to enjoy yourselves, that by choosing to spend it here, you are finding enjoyment here. And that is such a compliment, because you can never get time back. You can always get money back, you can always get things back, you can never get time back. Unfortunately, our time together tonight has come to a close. It is now time for you to go out and weave your own tale. And however you choose to weave it, whatever you choose to do, weave it with kindness. Follow me on all my socials. You know where to find the links. Until next time.